Good afternoon. So first of all, let's say thank you to Luke Edwards for joining Gordon this afternoon. It was quite an interesting chat, some good tips and tricks given away there. I think we have some more guests lined up for the future. So just to reiterate what Gordon said, although I'm going to be using a newer version, if you do want to try any of the stuff I do, the 10.3 demo, which is available from our website, you can do the majority of everything in there. So, without further ado, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the performance page, and that's the page that we see in front of us. So, just to give you a bit of sort of background of what the performance page is. So the performance page is the thing that you control during your show. Let me just switch my mouse over as I remember I'm on the wrong machine. There we go. We've got a mouse. Oh, and it appears that I've not shared my mouse. Let me just make that work. There we go. We've got a mouse now. Okay. So this is our performance page. So what we're seeing here on the left, these are layers. These are the different places that we can play our pieces of media. In the middle, we have all of our pieces of media. So for us, this could be a still image, this could be a movie clip, it could be a live camera input, or it could be a generative patch. We'll look a little bit further into those different types in a little while. On the right here is our banks list, and so each of these is an individual group of media. So I think let's start by bringing some media in. We'll create a bank for the new media, bring the media in, and then we'll see how we can apply it to a layer. So first of all, I'm going to press this plus under at the bottom of the banks list. That's going to allow me to enter a name. I'm going to call that Aaron's Bank 1. Now, what you do to get your media in here, you just drag it in from a Windows browser. I have a couple of folders just stashed here. Okay, so there are a few ways that you can approach bringing your media in, and this is the same. It doesn't matter if it's a still image, a movie clip, an input patch, or a generative patch. They all work on the same principle. So we can either go in and we can drag one individual file into our project, like so. We can see it's placed there in the middle. Or if you know that you want to add every clip that's in that folder, if you just grab the folder and drag it in, we can see where they're going to fall from that orange outline. In fact, let me just move that window over a little. There we go. And we can rearrange them afterwards as well. So I'm going to just drop those there. Okay, great. Let's get that window out of the way. So you can see that I'm dragging the group of media around by this blue bar at the top. I'm just grabbing that with my left mouse button. You can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. And actually you can kind of place it anywhere that you want within your workspace, wherever's good for you. But try not to let it overlap onto this layer widget or this banks widget. Sometimes you might see a problem if you do so. Just useful to be aware of. Okay. So we've got some media in there. We made a bank, placed some media in. Now let's get some media playing on the layers. Now when we look at these layers initially, we can see that one is large and it's showing us a preview, and the one below it is actually shrunken down at the moment. So if you right click with your mouse, that just expands or contracts the layer. And just as a point of reference, if your layers are shrunk down like this during your show, it uses very slightly less overhead to the machine. You'll notice as well that I've only got two layers here to start with. So we can add layers using the plus button, like so. And we can take layers away using the trash can icon. And you'll notice that I left clicked to select the layer that I want to delete first. Make sure you do that so you don't delete the wrong one, like so. Now depending which level of AI license you have, so if you've got a dongle, that could be Anjuna, Bondi or Miami. Media servers are always Miami level. So with Miami level, you can have up to 32 layers per fixture, per group. I believe it is 6 and 8 on Anjuna and Bondi, but I'm actually realising I'm going to have to confirm that for you. Someone is asking me the specification of the PC. I am actually doing this on a Q3 media server, so quite a lot of us Avalites have actually gone as far as bringing equipment back home with us so that we can properly work from home during this period. If you do want to run it on your own PC, AI, you do need a dedicated graphics card, and it has to be a relatively recent one. There is on our website, if you go onto the AI section and onto the dongles section, there should be some required specification. You can use AMD or Intel processors, that doesn't worry us. We would recommend at least an SSD, if not an NVMe for your content, and we would recommend using a separate drive for your content from the system drive. Anyway, I'm digressing a little bit there. Let's get some of this media playing on the layers and then see what we can sort of do with some of it. So, as you've already worked out, when I left click on the layers, I select which layer I'm working with. So I'm just going to left click that layer, and then I'm going to trigger a clip, and you'll notice that it will crossfade in nice and slowly. So by default, hello Tom, by default AI has a 2-second crossfade when you bring clips in. I actually quite like to leave it on this, and then if I want to, I can tell a specific clip to have a different crossfade time. But if you do want to change the global crossfade, if you just click on the AI icon, the file section, and the one at the end, the setup, and then down here on the left, we've got default crossfade period. This is in seconds, so you can see it's 2 seconds. So if I put that to 0, the next clip that I trigger will just snap in like so. I'm going to put it back to the 2-second fade just for now, because I'm quite a fan of the 2-second fade. Okay, cool. So, let's get another clip on another layer. And I'm just going to expand that just so you can see the preview of what's happening there. So, you'll notice that at the moment we can only see this video. So, those of you familiar with video are thinking blend modes, and those of you who are not familiar with video are possibly wondering why. So in video, and it's the same in things like Photoshop, when you want to combine layers of video, you have to choose what's called a blending mode, the way in which the pixel colours are combined. Just up here on the layer widget, so we've got some tools for each layer. We can see the word alpha. So if I left click and hold my mouse, I'm going to get up a list of blend modes. They're possibly a little bit hard to see on this webcast. Things like alpha transparency, intensity mix, additive, luma keying, difference, loads and loads. We've got transitions in there as well. You can actually even make your own. So a lot of these blend modes and transition types are made within AI. I am going to go for, in fact, we're going to leave it on alpha. What we're going to do, we're going to reduce the intensity of the blending. So alpha is looking for a transparent area of the video. Now this video doesn't have any, so it's just globally fading the video out. I'm going to try a couple of blend modes just to sort of give you a feel. Where is additive? So additive is a very sort of traditional, where everything is added together. So you can see that even with my faders up full, we can see both sets of images. Like so. Let's just give us something a bit more interesting. So Luma. So what Luma does, it takes out the darkest parts of the image first. So this is a little bit like you see in films when they do a green screen. That's why I was looking at those clips the other way round and expecting exactly the opposite to happen. There we go. There you go. So you see with Luma, it's taking out the darker parts there of the image, but it's leaving everything else solid. So there's loads of different blend modes. Let's just try one more. This is a blur mode that I made. So I made this one in the software. And I didn't select it, did I? There we go. So I mean that's entirely made within AI, this blend mode, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we've got our blend modes and we've got our ways to adjust the intensity of the blend mode. Now actually, although I'm treating this as a single fader, we've got two faders here, and if you look at the top there's an A and a V, audio and video. Now by default they are connected together, but if you want to control them separately, if you click on that AV and you'll get a separator between the AV, which means that if I had an audio track I could just fade out the audio, or alternatively I could fade out the video but leave the audio playing. Okay, so also on the layer widget we've got a speed controller. So it says 100% by default. 100% is play the clip at its original speed. So the reason we've done this is you might be playing back different clips which have different frame rates at the same time. And this just means that the speed is always relevant to the original clip. So if I click and drag on this, it can go all the way up to 1000, so that's 10 times the speed of the original clip, or it can go down below that. I got it to 5% there. I'm going to zoom in my little preview there with my mouse wheel. So you can see what's happening there is, rather than it being choppy, it's blending between the frames in the video. So this is called frame blending, and it's something that is provided by our codec, the AIM codec. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the AIM codec in a bit, so don't worry. Now if I want to easily reset this back to its original speed, I can grab that speed, drag it all the way to the left and let go, and it goes back to 100. So next to that we've got just a numerical version of the intensity value. Some people prefer to use a number, some people prefer to use a fader. Then we have play modes. Now I'll talk you through the play modes that we've got here. This is going to be hold the first frame, hold the last frame, loop forwards, loop backwards, play forwards once, play backwards once, stop, pause. Those two might sound the same, but stop will actually take you back to the start of the clip, whereas pause pauses at the place it is. Ping pong, so play forwards, then backwards, then forwards, then backwards. And another one called takeover mode, which I'm going to leave for another day because that needs a good explanation. Now you'll notice that we then get a repeat of some, and actually some of them are repeated twice. Now underneath these, again this might be a little hard to see on the webinar, we have I/O under the first section. So let's give you a comparison. So this is a normal play forwards mode. You can see the playhead here underneath, and when it gets to the end of the video clip it's just going to jump back to the start and then play through to the end again, and it's going to keep doing that until I tell it otherwise. So the next one, I/O, it's the same play mode but I/O. Now with I/O, when the fader drops to 0 the clip pauses, and when I lift the fader the clip will continue from where it got to. And then the last section are RTG I/O, re-trigger in out. So again I'm going to choose that loop forwards mode, but this time I drop out, and then when I bring it back in it's going to restart the clip like that. There you go. So it's restart the clip. So that's really useful if you want to make sure that when you bring the fader in the clip starts. That's quite nice for sort of walk-on looks in corporate events and things where it's hard to have a real understanding of timing until you see something happen. It's quite a useful thing. Okay. We do have in there as well an MTC mode. That's really useful if you're locking your clips to MIDI timecode and you want to be certain that it's absolutely frame locked to the incoming clock. We are going to have a whole webinar on timecode and external triggering, so if you're new to working with things like that in video, don't worry, we are going to bring you the knowledge. The last couple of controls here on the left, X was to clear our layer. Let's throw that one in there. And the speaker icon just mutes the layer if you've got audio in there. Then actually on the layer itself, let me put a different image there so it's a little bit easier to see the information. There we go. We've got some information here. We have an effects number, so we have two effects engines on the layer. This is telling me that there is no effect selected on either layer. An in point and an out point in frames. So if I had this is a still image, so there is actually only one frame in it. Let's go back to another clip there. That's quite a dark one. There you go. So you can see it's got our frames and the current frame there. And then on the right we've got the remaining clip time, and at 5 seconds that goes green, and then at 2 seconds that goes red, just to sort of warn us that it's near the end of the clip, and the sum time, how much of it is played through, as well as the total time on the top left. And then just down here where we see 25, that's telling me that this clip is 25 frames per second. I'm going to put a nicer clip back on there just so we can see what's happening. Let's get rid of that one as well. Okay, so we had some basic controls there. Let's just have a look at some of the further layer controls, and all of these controls can be controlled in real time during the show. If I double left click on the layer, we get an extended set of parameters. In fact, I realise I do need something else on that other layer to make it easier to see this. There we go. Now, pro tip, I'm going to just move this grey box down. If you just click on an empty area of the grey box and use the arrow keys, you can move it out of the way, which is quite handy. Let's move that there. Okay, so with my selected layer, and we can adjust things like we've got folder and file. So folder and file is a technique when you're calling from the console to choose the clips. Folder is which bank we're in. So if I change that to 1, you'll see that's jumped to the second bank. And then file is actually referencing the ArtNet value of the clip in that group of clips, in that bank of clips. So you can see as I go through my clips there, like so. There we go. I'm going to just reset that to 0. And I made a mistake, shouldn't have reset it to 0. So as you notice there, file and folder 00 clears the layer. That's useful if you're on a console. Okay, so we've got our folder and file. We can change our in and out points. So if I actually drag this, there we go, you can see on my, I've dragged it far too far then. I'm going to type in a number to hopefully get away with it. There you go. So you can see that that in and out point have adjusted there. Play speed. Now some of these values you see in a slightly different range here. They are presented in a normalized value. So once you get under the hood of AI, it's 0 to 1. So 0.5 is a half value. So things like position, for instance, we can move that around. We can change its rotation on all 3 axes. There we go. Image sizing we've got there as well. And I'm just going to press the apply defaults before I get too lost in all the things I've done there. Aspect ratio. It's quite useful if you're working with different video formats. Movement speed, I'm going to come back to that one. That's for when you're automating functions. And we also have a strobe built in on the layer. I would refer you to the DMX definition chart for the value ranges and what they actually do. If you do need to check the DMX definition chart, the easiest way is to press the question mark, which brings you up the manual, and somewhere down here, lighting console control, there we go, on DMX definitions. So in the manual we've laid out all of the functions. We tell you the value ranges, and if there are any sort of specific things, so I was on strobe there, there we go, strobe, it gives you a sort of an idea of what the values are actually going to hit within that at Division. This is also supplied as a PDF in the installation of AI, so if you want you can put it onto a tablet or something like that, and I have it on my iPad so I can refer to it when I need. Okay, so we've got some other useful things. Contrast. We've got saturation on the layer as well. So these are quite useful if maybe your clips aren't punchy enough or there's not enough contrast in them. Hue rotation on the layer. So what hue rotation is doing, it is adjusting all of the colours by the same amount. There we go. And we've got a drop down for our blend modes as well. So if we prefer, we can actually choose them all on here. You've got a colorization wheel on the layer, and that just applies an overall hue to everything. We've got our different cropping modes as well. So these just choose how the clip is applied to the screen, and that's dependent on the screen shape. Now we can also take, we're using media inside of AI here, but we could be using external media. So we support a couple of protocols, Spout and NDI. They basically do the same kind of thing. Spout has been around a little longer. NDI is a bit newer, but it has some higher level support. So what they are basically, let me just flick to another tab. There we go. So I've got this separate piece of software here, and this is just making me test patterns, but we could be working with the output from another video software, so you could output a generative video software straight into AI, or you could be sharing things with any software that shares video. After Effects, so I'm a big Adobe fan. Adobe will output NDI streams, so it means content producers can actually try their media on the surface without having to render out their video. So just to confirm what's going on here, if I click on this external image tab, let's just take that grey window up a little bit. There we go. So we can see on each layer we've got the option of a spout input or up to 8 NDI streams. Now I'm actually using NDI to stream from my Q3 to my laptop that's broadcasting, so I know that my first 3 are actually my desktops. I think if I do that one, there we go. So we can see the screen capture of this screen being fed back onto the layer of this screen, which is causing this nice feedback. I know that those test patterns were on number 4. There we go. So if this was another piece of software and I may be generating some content in there, we'd see the output being sent straight through to AI, and then AI just receives it on the layer, and then we can treat that as we want. We can still process it in the same way that we process anything else on the layer. All of our layer controls work, our colorization, our effects, all of that kind of stuff. We go back to our none, because that will show us what's on our AI layer. Okay, I'm going to just apply my defaults. There we go. So let's have a look. We've got over here on the right, we've got our effects engines. So if you give a click on there, so we supply around 90 or so effects, 100 effects now in AI. In fact, they keep growing and growing. All of the effects are real time. All of these parameters will show on the console as well. They can also all be MIDI controlled. And in 12.1 we actually have an OSC input module, so if you're an OSC user you can do that kind of thing. Everything, as I say, is real time, much like the console. We like you to be able to control and play as much as you want. I think you kind of get the idea here. And obviously when you're on the console, all of these parameter names will show on the console. I'm not going to go into using Notch today, but if you are a Notch user, once you've loaded it into the system, what you do is you load the Notch effect. That will then let you choose which block you're addressing, the layer within the block, and any exposed parameters in your Notch block will show here. But as I say, that's going to be one for another day. So we've got our layer controls, colorization, we've got effects modes, we've got blend modes, we've got our external texture inputs. We've got our default ArtNet values as well. So if you're using a console and you're using CITP or you're using a sort of a standard ArtNet connection, this is where each of our layers, they'll have their own addressing, and so you put the starting channel for each. So here we can see it's starting on universe 0 and starting at channel 1. If I click onto my next layer, you can see that that starts at channel 101, and that is because we have up to 100 parameters per layer. Obviously, if you're connecting with Synergy, this is all going to totally work. It's just much easier for you. If I press Open ArtNet Layer, I realise I keep saying ArtNet, but all of this is relevant to the Synergy stuff as well. So this is the possible parameters per layer. Now don't be intimidated by this at all. Broadly speaking, the first 40 channels is what most people use. That does positions, triggering clips, speed, blend modes, controlling basic selection of effects, RGB control of layers, all the really common stuff. The second set of 40 parameters goes into things like extended controls for the video effects. I'm very sorry, I keep forgetting I've got a chat room here. I'm seeing a few names pop up here. Good afternoon to all of you gentlemen and ladies out there. Yeah, so our second 40, I'm very sorry, I'm working on my own at the moment, so I'm kind of looking at one screen doing the server stuff, and then I keep remembering that we have a chat room, so I keep kind of looking at that. So we've got our second set of 40s, mainly extended parameters for the effects, but there are some offset values for time code and crossfade period. And the last set of 20 parameters gives us access to things like our audio, externally choosing which external texture we're doing, BPM linking stuff, so I'm going to come back to that in a bit. I'm going to show you some tap tempo and BPM assignment today, and a few other bits like your contrast and your saturation. If you're not controlling from a console and you do want to use MIDI, because obviously when you patch with a console it should have a personality and you don't have to think about which channels are which parameters. If you want to use MIDI controllers, this is a really good window to assign them. If you right click on any of these potentiometers, the knobs, so just to confirm, I'm going to just adjust something. Let's do our speed. You can see it's gone slow or fast. There we go. If I right click on any of these, you can see that we have Edit MIDI Map. Now I don't have a MIDI controller plugged in at the moment. If I did, I could select it from here. I could choose which channel I want to work on. I could press Learn and then I can move the controller, or press Learn down here for keys, and so on. The observant of you will have noticed that actually you can do the same with ArtNet there. So if you want, you can come in and you can specify a specific ArtNet address to control that parameter. That can be quite useful as well. And obviously you can choose the network adapter on your system there as well. Right. Let's have a think. So we've got our layer effects. Okay, yeah, we've got our layer effects. So we're pretty much there with our layer effects. Yeah, let's have a look at some clip specific properties. So there are two sets of properties. We've got our layer properties and we've got our clip properties. So when I play a clip on the layer, it will use the layer's properties unless the clip has any overriding properties. So I'm going to right click on a clip here, and that brings us up to the clip specific window. So what we've got here in the middle of the screen, we've got a nice big preview. We can see our playhead down here at the bottom. On the right, this is really sort of editing the clip, so we can have individual positions, scales, we can even crop clips. We can add soft edging to clips, just one specific clip, which can be really useful. You can change the brightness, contrast, gain, hue and saturation of the clip, and again that allows you to just adjust a single clip if you've got one clip which isn't punchy enough. And yeah, colour wheel again. So underneath on that playhead we've got some useful info here as well. So again we've got our frame rate, our current time, our total time is over on the right, and in the middle, this is quite useful, this will give you the full name of the clip, the resolution, and it will actually tell you which codec you are using here. So as of, I can't remember if it was 11, but certainly in version 12 of AI, you have to use the AIM codec. But that's not a problem because we have a built-in transcoder. So a transcoder, for those that don't know, is a thing that allows you to convert one video format to another. On the left, the things are really more about controlling the clip, how it's controlled, how it plays back. So you can have a default speed in there, you can have a default play mode, you can enter a timecode trigger value if you're using timecode to trigger the clip, in and out frames, all those kind of things. I'm going to jump over it. So transition period. So before I mentioned that we had a global 2-second transition period. If I wanted, I could tell this clip to specifically have its own period. So in that case, I've put a 10 in there, and that will give me a 10-second fade in. A lot of the parameters do say -1, so if it says -1, it just means use the system default. Sync groups is a way of synchronizing multiple clips together. I'm going to bring that. I've got a whole tutorial coming up about external syncing and external control. That's all going to come back in there at the same time. Okay, and we've got our beats there. So what we'll do, let's have a look at how this beats thing works. But before we do that, I want to just show you some things which a couple of little tricks which I find really, really useful when working with multiple layers. Okay. In fact, before we do the multiple layers, let's just show a little bit of management of clip and sort of media bank management. So if I drag select around a couple of clips, we can see they're highlighted with a sort of a flashing line. So what about if I want to move these clips, so let's say over here. Okay, so I've got a couple of options here. All of these use the control button. I can either use Control and C. So Control and C will copy and paste and leave the original, as you'd expect. Control X will paste, but it will delete the original. And Control and Delete will delete the clips, as you'd expect. I'm just going to get rid of that one as well because I'm fussy. Maybe I want to sort of reorganize this whole group of clips in one go. So down here, we've got some really useful. In fact, let's just bring some of these clips out. Control X, and then let's just put a couple up there just for awkwardness. There we go. So if I want them all to be in a single block for a start, let's just grab them all and press this button on the left on the media bank. So that's just going to group them all together. The plus and the minus button add or remove. I cannot remember if it's columns. It tells me at the top. So don't forget, at the very top here, this AVO intuition thing will tell you stuff. So the plus is going to add columns and the minus is going to take columns. So just to confirm, minus will do that to my clips, plus will do this to my clips. Now if I press the A, we can see the ArtNet value of the clips. Now I can see that they're all running consecutively here. I'm going to just go in and change the value of this to something silly. That's 100. So you can see the value in the top right here. Now when I press this button here, the A, it will adjust the ArtNet value based on its position in the grid. So you see it's changed it. It's changed all of them now, so they start at 0 and go through consecutively now. So that's quite useful if you've added a load of clips, then taken some out, and you've got a sort of mishmash of ArtNet addresses. Okay, so let's just show you a couple of little quick tricks. Getting towards the end of my time here. Time goes much quicker than you would expect on here. Okay, so let's say I've got two clips. I've got this clip here. In fact, that's the one that I edited on the right-click properties, and you can see that soft edging that I brought in there. I'm going to just... Yeah, in fact, I'm going to leave that one there. Let's pretend, for the sake of argument, that that is a beautiful corporate logo, and I always want to make sure that it appears on this very top layer. So sometimes when you've got loads of layers, you might have the wrong layer selected, and you could accidentally press that and send it to the wrong place in your mix, and it can make undesired results. So what we want to do is we want to make sure this clip only ever triggers on this layer. Now the easiest way to do this is to trigger the clip to the layer that you want it to be on. Once it's on the layer, you then press this L button here, and I'm going to just zoom in a little bit just to show you. The font has stayed the same size. There's an L1 which has appeared there, and that is telling me that I'm really sorry, you're going to have to bear with me just a moment. Harry, I'm doing a webinar, I'll have to call you back in half an hour. Very sorry about that. It was a member of staff phoning me during a webinar. Okay, yes, so I've pressed L to assign that clip to that layer. So now, even if I have another layer selected, when I press that clip, it's always going to trigger on that first layer. So knowing that, I'm going to then assign this clip, I've got it faded down, there we go, assign this clip to this second layer. Might be hard to see, it says L2 right now. Now, what about if I want them to come on at the same time? So obviously I could try and trigger them quickly like that, but it's not great. They're not going to be in time, they're a little bit out of synchronicity. So ideally we want to be able to trigger one and have them all trigger. So all I need to do, I'm going to just select both of the clips at the same time, and then here we have this one. It's like two little friends, so we call this the buddy group, friends group. So when I click that, it's hard to see it there. It's giving me a B and the number 0, telling me this is buddy group 0. So you can have 255 groups within a single bank. So you can make different groups of clips to trigger at different times. So now, even if I've got a different layer selected, when I trigger one of those clips, they're both going to go to their assigned layers and use any sort of preset clip properties that I've made. Otherwise they'll use any layer properties that are also there. We can even go a step further. I'm not going to jump into that today because I am running out of time here. If I had multiple screen groups, I've just seen a question there about a media map. I'm going to jump onto that after this. If I have multiple screens, so in AI we can have different mixes, we could also lock it to the fixture like that. So the question there, I just saw a question, can you save the media map? I'm going to assume we're talking about this bank of media, and the answer is yes. So when I save a bank of media, everything is stored in here. It knows what the clips are, it knows any ArtNet assignments, it knows all of these right-click properties that are assigned and adjusted. They're all saved within the bank. So to find your bank, first of all I'm going to save by just double left-clicking the AI icon. You can tell it's saved because that disk has come up at the top. I'm just going to shrink AI down. Now in your AI installation folder, so the easiest way is right-clicking on your program icon and saying open file location. You've got a banks folder in there, and we can see the bank that I've made there already. So if I just give myself a space there, and I can just drop this bank in like so. Okay, so let's just very quickly, I'm concerned that Facebook might kick me off in a few minutes because of the time that we've assigned. So very quickly, let's just talk about getting other media in. I'm going to just make a new bank for this. I could be adding this to an existing bank as well. I just wanted to do it this way as it will be a little bit easier for you to see what's going on here. So as I mentioned, as of version 12, maybe even version 11, okay, I see another question about folders there. Give me a second. I can sort of say yes. I'll give you a full yes to that in a moment. Let me just bring some media in to show you how the transcoder works. So again, I've got some folders here. he says. There we go. So I've got some clips that are not in AIM format. So I am just going to let's grab an H.264 clip. You can see I've got things like DXV3. This is some of the stuff that I test with when we do a new build of AI. If I just drag that clip in, and you'll see straight away, it's actually telling us it's an unsupported codec, and it's showing us the red AI icon. So what it's done is it's added it to our transcoder automatically. So up the top here on the Manage tab, let's just do that again. You can see it's added my clip in. Now when I press convert, it's actually saying that it's going to replace it in the bank that I've made it in here. And it's telling me where it's going to store that clip. If I want to, I can give these different locations. The destination path, for instance, I can click there and I can choose where I want that to go. You can see what it's doing. You can see the file structure it's given me here. Within the AI media folder, it's actually given me a folder called New Media, which is the name of my bank, and it's going to put it in there. So if I have audio on the clip, I can enable or disable it. I haven't got audio on this clip. I'm just literally going to press play to make it process this, so you can see how far through this clip is and also how far through the total jobs we are. So I am, whilst that is doing its thing, I'm going to hold off on a moment because I'm just seeing how quickly that's going through. So once that is processed, it tells us that it's done, and if I go back to my Operate tab, we'll see now that it's replaced that clip, the AI in red, with the actual clip. So now if I want to, I can just come on and I can trigger my clip there like normal. Okay, there was a question there about can I link a bank to a folder within Windows to automatically sync new media in from that folder? So it's sort of a yes and sort of a no. Working within the interface itself, so like this, there isn't a way. You would actually have to manually add the clips to the bank when they come in. However, if you are working from a console, this is where the file folder stuff can come in. If I go to my system settings, because there's a setting which is relevant to this. In our console settings at the top left of the system settings here, we have triggering method. So roller queue, that's a hark back to an earlier day. That means just use these media tiles. If I'm using numeric file folder or alphanumeric, it means rather than reading from the interface, it is reading back directly from my folder structure in AI. There we go. I forgot the keyboard shortcut there. So what you do is in AI you specify your overall media folder, and then it looks for folders within that folder. So that method, you can just keep adding clips throughout your show, and as long as you use the correct ArtNet address, then you can just call it. You don't have to sort of refresh the bank or anything. Hopefully that sort of explained that a little bit. You might have guessed by now, whilst I'm not scared of a console, I'm a Vidiot at heart, so sometimes the thought of console makes my brain go a little bit slower. I think probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to call it a day there. Before I do that, in fact, let's just point out this keyboard icon here. This is keyboard shortcuts for this specific page. We found it really hard because we have a few different sort of hotkeys that we use with other keys. So what we've done, the control, for instance, is purple. So that means that if I want to do Control A to select all tiles, it's telling me that it's purple. So they're the sort of key combinations, if you see what I mean. Anything that's blue is used in conjunction with a Shift key, and so on. There is an Alt key that comes up on some of the others as well. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to call it a day in terms of what I'm showing you there. I will leave this open for a few minutes in case anyone comes up with anything they want to ask. I think our next sessions are on Friday. It's both Gordon and myself on Friday. If you do have, so we've got sort of a few of the topics are planned out. If you do particularly come up with a topic that you think might be useful to cover, do feel free to let us know. The easiest way is you can either contact me, which is aaron@avalites.com, or if you want, you can do support@avalitesmedia.com, and just let me know. Hello, Ronald. Bon dia, I think. I'm really sorry if I probably just used the wrong language there. So, Ronald, in answer to your question, you can actually store your clips anywhere on any drive that you want to store if you're triggering them from the interface. We would always recommend using a separate drive to your system drive. However, if you want to do the ArtNet console calling method, you're going to have an overall folder where all of your folders of clips live. The console method can only really work with one specific folder with the folders within that folder, if that makes any sense. Okay, so I think we are about there for today. Like I say, I'm going to leave this open for I think Facebook is probably going to give me another 5 minutes or so before it cuts off my stream. Hello there from the UK. Hello to Turkey. Thank you all for tuning in, by the way. I'm hoping we've got a few. There's certainly some names and faces that I don't recognise there, which is always a good thing. Hopefully there's a few people that are new to the server. Don't at all be intimidated by the server if you're new to media. The easiest way to think about this, especially if you come from a lighting background, is that the server is basically just a fixture. Each layer has a lot of channels, but it is basically just a fixture. And everything, all of those 100 parameters on the layer, they're all controllable from the console. Okay, so I think, so I'm going to leave, I think it's going to cut us off at 20 past. We put quarter past as the cut-off time, and I think Facebook allows us a couple more minutes. So don't forget as well, avalites.com/online resources. That's going to give you a full timetable of upcoming webinars, online chats. It's going to give you links to software as well. So as we've mentioned before, most of the stuff that we're going to do in the Titan and the AI webinars can be done with the demo versions of AI or Titan. So even if you don't have an Avo key, you can download a version of AI or Titan just from a couple of versions back, and you'll be able to follow along a lot of the stuff. If you are a media person and you're listening in, jump in and have a look at the Titan stuff. I know that in our world, in our video world, we're often quite separate to the lighting, but it's becoming much, much closer, and we're all just dealing with pixels at the end of the day. It's just that we have quite a few more pixels than they do. Okay, so I think, thank you very much, Brad. Good to have you tuned in. I'm going to take the last question from Anders. So he has said, his question, whether all the media files in these maps are automatically 0 to 255 DMX addresses. Yeah, so they're given DMX range rather than ArtNet range, because 65,000 clips in a bank would be too many. They get numbered. As I bring in a new clip, it gives it the next ArtNet address. So then if you want to, you can either go in and adjust it there, the ArtNet ID, or you can do the grouping, you can change them all numerically, and so on. If you're talking about the file folder method, one was numeric file folder, so in that case you have to put the number at the start of the file name. The alphanumeric one, that just takes them in alphabetical order. Cool, so I'm going to call that a day. and I think we are there. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I will catch you all on Friday, if not before.